Hello and welcome to FLW TV. My name is Ben Wignall and this is the latest instalment in the fan debate series where we strikers of all time from a club. It's the turn of Hull City this time around and I'm delighted to be joined by Matt Lill of the Hull and Back podcast. Matty, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks yourself. Busy day at work, so
yeah, it's a bit quiet at the minute being the international break, but we're plodding along. We've got this content strand coming out now. If any Hull fans who want to get involved and perhaps send their top 5 strikers in, please do not hesitate to get involved in the comments on YouTube or Facebook, and we will feature those in here. Right, let's get cracking with Matt's fifth best striker of all time for the time. Now, just to stress, all of Matt's picks are players that he's seen in his lifetime. So some of the leading scorers from Hull, the likes of Chris Chilton and Ken Wagstaff from the 60s and 70s won't make the list. But if there is any Hull fans watching who did see them and perhaps others in action, please. So Matt, your number 5 pick, who have we got?
Yeah, I think it's really important for me to mention that I don't like to give an opinion on players that I've not seen firsthand. So whilst there's a really strong argument as to the players that are playing before my time were better than the ones I'm about to mention, I've not seen them firsthand, so I can't comment. So I'm going to go off those from any time from 2003 to 2004 season when I first started going. So starting with that season, my number 5 would be Danny Allsop. He's my first experience of, alongside his partner at the time, of the big and small, the little and large, as it was around then. So we saw a lot of 4-4-2s, and he was part of the little and large alongside Ben Burgess. It's a small, fast striker who got fed off by the big guy, and together they played a really big partnership in terms of our first promotion, which really catapulted us up to what then became the new League One and kickstarted our journey up to the Premier League. He started off with, I think overall he got a record around 22 in 67 for us, so in all competitions. So in terms of striker, just under 1 in 3 is not bad going at all. So yeah, massive fan of Danny also.
Yeah, he's not a player I can press too much to knowing about, but obviously he clearly had talent. Looking, his scoring record for Hull and other clubs. He did it, Notts County before that, and I think he went back to Australia after he left Hull in 2005 and did pretty well back then, and went to a few other countries. And like you said, back then a partnership of Danny Allsop and Ben Burgess, it was quite a solid strike for us in League Two and League One. Do you think that's one of the more popular time in League Two? The pretty big lads. I think Danny was about 6 foot. Ben was a little bit bigger. Do you think that must have been a bit of a nightmare for League Two defenders playing against them?
Yeah, definitely. And I think with the calibre of players we had at the time as well, there wasn't. We actually had one of the better squads in the league, I think. Especially when you look at some of the players that were playing in that league, they went on to play in the Premier League with us, the likes of the Andy Dawsons, the Boaz Miles, Ian Ashby's, and stuff like Ryan France. Those sorts of players went on to play in the Premier League for us. So we arguably had a really good squad, albeit they grew throughout the years. We had a really good squad, and that helped with the service and the quality we had up front. So I think they finished with 33 goals between them in the old Division 3. So if any team scoring 33 goals between 2 players, you probably stand a good chance of going up.
Yeah, definitely a very prolific partnership. Now let's move on to your number 4. Yeah, coming at 4th place, Matt. Who have you gone with here?
So it's difficult to name one without the other. So if I'm going with Danny Allsop, I've got to bring in Ben Burgess. And he kind of was like that lovable giant. Everybody liked him. He was great around the club. I remember when I was younger, during that time, I got my picture taken with him. Just little things like that. They go back in your memory. And when it comes down to picking your best of all time, it's not always about who scored the most goals in the least amount of games. It goes by their effect they have on the fans and the effect they have on the rest of the team and stuff like that. And Ben played a big part in that. And again, in terms of goal scoring records, I think he finished just above 1 in 3 with 25 and 74 in all competitions. So again, alongside the little and large and stuff, it's hard to knock. It's hard to knock what sort of quality was there. We touched on it mainly in like the number 5 position.
Yeah, personally, I've had a brief experience where he did a sports journalism course whilst he was playing for Blackpool, and he was a visitor at my university when I was there for a lecture. So he's a pretty clever guy. I think he's in teaching now. But in terms of as a player, he was just a very solid striker in the EFL, wasn't he? Especially that promotion winning season you mentioned in League Two when he was top scorer. He proved to be very clinical. Obviously, he went on to play in the Championship for Blackpool quite regularly. Do you perhaps wonder though, what might have been for Burgess if he got a bad knee injury in 2004 that cut short that season? If that didn't happen, then could we have seen, maybe an EPS?
Yeah, at the time, you remember, like it was still my first full season of watching football. So, you can argue some people don't have the best opinions when they've been watching it for 20 years. So, as a young lad who's watching at the age of 14, it's hard to have a decent opinion and be able to back it up. But at the time, I remember thinking, this ain't good. The cruciate knee ligament injury got, I can't remember if it was at the back of the 2004 season or at the beginning of the first season in League One. But either way, he's our top goal scorer in the season and then gets crocked. Comes back in when we're back in the Championship on the back of our double promotion. So it's never difficult jumping 2 leagues, and which is what he had to do. And I believe he scored on his debut back in the Championship again. Brighton might be Brighton, can't remember. But he scored in his first game back, so it was a good one for us.
Yeah, we definitely ended up having a little solid career with Blackpool in the Championship. Now let's move on to the number 3. Who figures here at number 3, Matt?
Number 3. This one's probably going to split a couple of fans. Some fans might think he should be higher, judging on the timescale of which I'm picking players from. Some might think he shouldn't be in there at all. But this one's going to be Abel Hernandez, strictly because of what he did for the team in the short period he was here. Now, I know a lot of fans probably aren't a fan of what he did in the Premier League because his goal-scoring record in the Premier League wasn't the best. But, when you bring a striker like that in and you're probably arguably one of the worst squads in the league, you're not going to have a player like Abel Hernandez leading your front line as a sole striker or a lone striker, which is what we did. So I think in terms of the position he played and the team he was in, he didn't actually do too bad to pick up four goals in both seasons. However, then when you bring him to the Championship, he goes on to get, I think it's 20 goals in the Championship on the year when we get promoted again. Really shows his quality in terms of when he's got the players around him that are as good as the league he's in. It really showed his quality. He's exciting. He was fast. He had a couple of skills. It was enough. It was that sort of thing. When you see it in the papers, or I think it's on Football Manager when they say the fans are really paying to see this player and stuff like that. It's a typical example of that. That's what it was.
Yeah, I guess it may have been a surprise to some, to see him stay at Hull for so long. I think it was 4 years he ended up at Hull, and I guess you have to remember, he only scored 4 goals in his debut season, so it wasn't quite a shock to see that a bigger club didn't take a punt on him after the first relegation. He certainly, proved his worth with 20 goals in that promotion season. He went on to play in the Premier League again. I think it was a similar strike rate in that second Premier League season of 4 goals. Despite him, Matt, obviously being, splitting opinion with the fans for, his scoring success at Championship level. Do you think he was perhaps unlucky in the top flight to not be, surrounded by the players that could give him those chances, or do you think he was just one who maybe just couldn't quite make that step up?
I don't know. It is a bit of a tough one, I think, because I'd like to think some goal scorers are goal scorers, aren't they? And I'd like to say whatever league you're in, with some players to some degree could do it with whatever team they're in because they are goal scorers and that's just what they do. If you put them around better quality players, they'll score them goals because they'll get the service. And he's a prime example of that. At the Championship level, he had Championship players around him and he scored a lot of goals. He got the right assist. But then at the Premier League level, he had Championship/Premier League players around him. And at that point, he didn't really perform. And for strikers, they're only as good as people around him, I think.
Yeah, well, he was definitely rated in Uruguay anyway. He got a around 27 caps for his country. So he's definitely a talented player, but like you said, he does split opinion. Now for the runner-up spot in this list. Number 2, Matt, who's just missed out on the top spot accolade here?
Oh, I think number one by a long shot for me. But these other 4 I could have put anywhere, and there's a couple that are unlucky to not make the remaining 4. But this one I've had to go for Matty Fryatt. The championship player he was. Unlucky through injury to not really get his chance at a higher level, and a lot like I'd say Abel Hernandez in that theory, because he was just a goal scorer. I liked him when he scored on his debut. He scored hat tricks for us. He was just that fox in the box. If I'm to put a phrase on him, I'd probably say the cheap man's Michael Owen. The championship's Michael Owen, because he was just that sort of player. You could get a goal out of nothing, but it wasn't as though he was damaging up top without, with some players they can sometimes be guilty of awful first touches, only being in a game when they score, whereas he was in the game all the time, running defences, pressing players and stuff like that. So he was a credit to the team, and he was unlucky to not play as much in the Premier League. Part of it came down to injury, but part of it came I think he was playing under Bruce, and Bruce signed stronger players who he fought for going up, so he's a bit unlucky not to play.
Yeah, I certainly remember Fryatt when he was even at Walsall, lower down the leagues, and at Leicester, he was firing in the goals. He certainly knew where the back of the net was for each club he played for. I guess, the first 18 months he had at Hull was a great time for him, especially his first full season. He scored 16 goals. Do you just perhaps get the sense, though, that what might have been if he didn't suffer that Achilles injury? Obviously, he came back from it and scored a couple of times in the Premier League, but I think you can argue he was never quite the same player. And obviously, like you said, brought in a few more options that were ahead of him.
Yeah, and do you know what? It is a little bit of a tough one with Matty Fryatt, because he got that goal in the semi-final against Sheffield United at Wembley, and I think that was kind of like his signing off piece for me. I thought, this is probably where it ends for him. He's gone so high. He deserves something like that in the career that he's had, and I'm glad we could give him that. But with Achilles injuries, they're just never that easy to get over, are they? You don't see players often come back. It's like the big knee injuries as well. It's tough to come back on it because your confidence isn't always there. It never feels the same again. So, it was unlucky for him, because he was a really, really good player.
Yeah, I think his career definitely did peak at Hull. I think he went on to Nottingham Forest. It just didn't quite work out for him. And I think he suffered from a few more injuries, but he'll definitely remember his time at Hull at being a good one. And now we get the famed top spot. The holy grail of Hull City strikers, at least in Matt's lifetime anyway. I think it might be pretty obvious who's coming, Matt, but who is it?
Yannick Sagbo. I'm joking. Mbakani. Oh, geez, there's loads I could go off there. That joke could go on all day. It's got to be Dean Windass, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy that is himself, Dean Windass. He's the poster boy. He's Hull City. Anybody, if you name one striker to anybody outside of Hull, tell me a striker who played for Hull City, Dean Windass is probably going to be the name that they say. And it's for all the right reasons. The guy was amazing. On the pitch, as a fan, you watched him, you enjoyed him. It was funny. Just everything about him was just amazing to watch. And as a fan, you could just have to sit and be in awe of him. His first touch, his striking ability, the influence he had on the players around him. And to touch on that, the way he helped Fraser Campbell come through in that season kind of made him the sort of player he was. All right, he had the background of coming up through the Manchester United ranks, but he played a big part on that, and them two worked together really well. And Fraser was really unlucky to not be in my top 5, really unlucky. But you can't mention Dean without just saying how phenomenal he is. And to that goal against Bristol City in the playoff final, I think it's still arguably one of the best playoff final goals. I can't think of many better than it.
Yeah, for the situation it was in to get to the Premier League for the first time, it's definitely a memorable one. He's the 10th highest scorer in the club season. Obviously, had that stint before you started watching Matt, where he scored a few goals and ended up playing in the Premier League. He's a player that'll probably go down as one of the best in history for the club, and no one obviously will forget him scoring the winner in that final. In terms of general players and not just strikers, Matt, does he rank as the greatest player you've seen?
Does he rank as the greatest player I've ever seen? There's a couple that come into that, but I think I remember the moment when we signed JJ Kocher. We got him, and that was the season we went up as well, I believe. And he was just unbelievable. We'd never seen a player like that at Hull before. Especially when you think 4 years before that or 5 years before that was down in Division 3, and then all of a sudden we've got JJ Kocher on the same pitch, Nick Barmby, players like that, and you think, what's going on here? Like, I'm sort of like one of the luckiest guys alive to be going from watching the games where I was at, getting promoted at Yeovil away, to then being at the dizzy heights of the Premier League, and we've just had players like JJ Kocher signing for us, and that was just unbelievable, And then closely followed by that's got to be Giovanni. The effect he had on us in the Premier League, granted he was a luxury player, one of those where he had the ability to score out of nothing, but the memories he gave us as Hull fans was just unbelievable. You talk about the first win of the Premier League where he scores against Fulham, the win away from home at Arsenal, the free kick, and anybody who hasn't seen this free kick away from home at Tottenham where we would beat them 1-0, I challenge anybody to see a penalty from a free kick from further out, more in the corner. The guy gave us some unbelievable memories, as did a lot of the players did that first season in the Premier League.
Yeah, I do remember some Giovanni goals as a kid. They were very special. Just touching on Windass finally, he went up with Hull in 2008. I think he only made a couple of appearances before on loan to Oldham that season as well. Were you a bit gutted that he didn't get a bit more of a chance, or did you understand it because of his age? Even though he did help you get to the Premier League, did you kind of understand why he wasn't given more of a chance?
Yeah, no, but for a player to be able to impact a team, they don't always have to be on the pitch, and I think Dean Windass is a prime example of that. Because someone like him, at the age of 39, to still be able to put his boots on and turn up for a Premier League team is quite incredible. You normally only see that in a goalkeeper, but I think at the age of 39 or really late in 38, he scored against Portsmouth in a 2-2 draw. So, you can't really take the shine off anything he does. And one of the better moments for him has got to be at the end of the season we get promoted. He scored the goal to get us promoted. But the year before that, he's on loan from Bradford to us, and he scores the goal that keeps us up and sends Leeds United down. So, as a fan, Leeds don't really care about us, but we like to think they do. So when we sent them down and we went, and the next year we go up, it's just mesmeric, isn't it? It's brilliant.
But that was a very satisfying moment as a Hull fan. Well, that rounds off our top 5 Hull strikers of all time. Thank you, Matty, for joining me in. And any Hull fans, check out the Hull and Back podcast, which you can find on all good podcasting websites, just Spotify, Anchor, and also YouTube. We've got more shows coming up tomorrow to round off the week. We've got the betting show at 10 a.m. where I'll be hopefully picking a few winners from the threadbare EFL schedule this weekend because of the international break. At 2 p.m. we have the Rotherham, and at 4 p.m. we have the weekend preview. So stay tuned for all of that, and we will see you later.